Hello again, everybody, for I think it's a 7th or 8th session of the day. I've lost count. I'm delirious by this point. This session today, Boutinot in the New World, I have a cast of characters that is extremely exciting. We have the team from Domaine Boutinot joining us from the cellar in Caran, and we have our 2 product management extraordinaires in the Boutinot tasting room. So I'm just going to go through so everybody knows who everyone is. And before we kick off, we're going to be taking questions throughout the session. So don't feel like you have to wait to the end to send us your questions. Put them in the Q&A now and we'll answer them as we go. But Robin, would you be able to introduce yourself first, if that's okay?
Yeah, hi, I'm Robin Naylor. I'm a product manager at Boutinot, responsible for South Africa, Australia, New Zealand. I worked for Boutinot for about 17 years and travelled around the New World for Boutinot quite a lot.
And Alex, what about yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Alex Gittins. I'm product manager, UK-based product manager for the Americas primarily. So I've travelled quite a lot to California with Samantha, who you'll be introduced to in a minute, and also to South America with Guillaume. And yeah, over the last 6 years, been all over the Americas and learned a lot along the way. So I'm looking forward to this session.
Excellent. And Eric, would you be able to introduce yourself and the team in France?
Hello, Eric, head of wine, and I had the chance to travel with a bit of everybody, Alex, Robin, Samantha, all over the world to cover this extra slice of what Boutinot is doing.
And who else have you got in Boutinot, France? Who else is joining us from there today?
Samantha Bailey, being a member of the Boutinot team for quite some time. I first started off in South Africa in terms of a new world, but an old world country. And I've since joined up the forces with both Alex and Robin to discover a bit of Australia, New Zealand, and California.
And Guillaume, would you be able to introduce yourself for us?
Yeah, hello, Guillaume. I'm a French winemaker. I am in charge of the south of France for winemaking for Boutinot. And I am involved in South America with Alex for the winemaking process and the wine sourcing in Chile and Argentina.
Perfect. It's such a great broad range of speakers in this session. Just, I suppose, to start us off, when we talk about Boutinot in the New World, one of the questions that the team in international get quite often is, how do you do own production without actually having vineyards there? So, Alex, would you be able to tell us how is it that we are able to do own production?
Yeah, I mean, simply we rely on many years worth of relationships that we built up from the early days with Paul Boutinot, beginning in South Africa, forming relationships with growers, and those growers sort of understand exactly the kind of style we're looking for, and over time, that strength of relationships has come through in exactly the right profile wines that we want. From South Africa, that led us to other countries. And Chile was probably next, I think, in the New World, where we developed similar relationships, usually with smaller growers. We generally don't work with the big guys. We're looking for quite often family growers that we can work with year on year and have an influence over the quality of fruit and the style of wine that we want to produce.
Cool. So one of you've mentioned relationships a lot there.
In the relevant countries, but then quite often we will bottle in France with our winemaking team present. So Guillaume, Samantha, and Eric are always there on hand to make sure the wines are received in the right quality and they're bottled in the best possible condition for our markets.
Yeah. How important is that for our customers as well, that all of those wines from all those different regions are available from one location?
I think for international customers, it's a really strong part of our offer. The fact that we have wines from, I think, 9 different countries, soon to be 10 different countries, which are all stored in Macon and can be accessed by customers around the world, is really strong, and it means that lots of customers can pick different parts of the portfolio that suits them.
Yeah, perfect. So you've mentioned relationships a lot there. What I'd like to touch on before we go into the specifics of where we work and what we do, how important Eric, if you could tell us about this, how important is the relationship between the product manager and the winemaker?
It's a fantastic duo. I mean, I think that the winemaker sees the wine, definitely. He sees the qualities of the wines, the strength, the discoveries. The winemaker, the product manager, brings the extra slice. He brings his view of the market, his understanding of the customers, his ideas around potential new concept, new label. So for me, as I said in the past, the product manager is the right part of the brain and the winemaker is the left part. We need both of them to give birth to a nice project.
Yeah, perfect. And Samantha, what about you? How important is it that you have a relationship with a product manager where you have that mutual trust? And what would you say that each side brings?
I think it's essential to developing the right sort of wine for the markets that we're aiming for, because as winemakers, we can have an idea on what we want to capture in bottle, but we also must have market knowledge that comes from the product manager and his contacts with customers and the whole sales team to understand actually what is required in the marketplace. Yeah. So we really do work. We have what we call a sort of a buddy relationship, which is why we always work in a binôme, as we say in French, because it is the sum of those two competencies that actually make our work really, really worthwhile.
Yeah. What about you, Robin? From a product manager point of view, what is it that the winemakers are bringing to the party?
I think when, let's say, a product manager has an idea or goes a bit crazy on a whim sometimes to dream something up, then the fact that we're sort of in a country together as a winemaker that's going to be receiving the wine ultimately, and the product manager who might be having an idea about how it might work in a given market, we can kind of sense check each other's potential failings, and it feels like a really kind of a useful and a great dynamic. But you know, because we have those sort of two people working together on an idea and perhaps discovering a wine and wondering whether it's a good idea or not. Frankly, is definitely the benefit of those two people working together. And I think, I'm sure we'll touch on the basic, but I think those two people being in that country together, in vineyards, talking to growers, and very often some of our most successful launches really have been through wines that we didn't expect to find. And I think that working together and being mutually excited about something that we have found is really relevant to Boutinot's own production, especially with some of the more unusual wines.
In the photographs on screen right now, it's Alex and Guillaume. Guillaume, could you tell us where these photos were taken? What this trip was?
Yeah, it is a picture from our last travel with Alex in Argentina and Chile. On the left part, we can see Brescia father, who is the owner of Brescia cellar, where we are dealing our famous Pablo and Walter.
Yeah.
So it is a long story. We started several years ago. And after that, we are in the vineyard on the top. We are in the vineyard in Chile, in Valle Central in Chile, with our partnership Fernando. And I would say it's more than a partnership. We have real relationships with Fernando. It's getting a friend of us, and the last picture is with Alex. It represents during our travel. It's obviously it's very professional, but sometimes it's laid back like this, and it is a part of our job, and it is the funny part.
Yeah.
The funny part. Yeah.
Absolutely. One of the. Sorry, go on, Samantha.
I was going to say, it is an essential part, because when we're traveling in areas that we're not familiar with, it is essential to taste wines that you can go and pick up off a supermarket shelf or a fine wine cellar shelf, just to understand what the wines of that area can produce, because we can't know everything, we can't taste everything, but getting a feel for what's going on around is essential to us creating and putting together the cuvée that we then bring and bottle in France and present as our New World partnerships and representation for our own portfolio.
Yeah, that's exactly this point that Eric raised in our conversations before this session. The importance of going and spending time in the region, immersing yourself in the culture in order to develop wines that are representative of that region. Robin, would you be able to speak about how important it is for you guys to spend actual time there?
I think just to hover over Pablo y Walter again for a bit here, it's interesting that when you look at certainly 8-10 years ago, when you look at say Malbec from Mendoza in a given market, the wines look like they have come from potentially Bordeaux. They're remarkably unexpressive of the place from which they come. I think by traveling to these countries and going to the effort to travel to these individual countries with a winemaker and a product manager and to absorb some of the local culture and feel some of the colour of their lives. And Mendoza, for instance, is a fantastic place. And if you pick up a bottle of Malbec from Mendoza in a supermarket or a retailer, it will quite often feel like it's from somewhere else, because they want to project a slightly different personality to that which is necessarily true to their culture. But by travelling to that country and realising that somewhere like Mendoza feels incredibly colourful, we want to reflect some of that in a slightly different way with Malbec, and to reflect some of the qualities that we found was absolutely true of that country. So if you're trying to express a wine in the bottle that's true of that region, it feels like we can have some fun in terms of expressing that region on the bottle as well. And that's really an exciting thing for us to do, is to be able to absorb some of the culture of that region and then to reflect that on bottle as well as in the glass as well.
So, Eric, from a winemaking point of view, when you're trying to make a wine that is representative of that region, is it entirely the wine, or is it the approach? Is it the wine itself, and is it the branding around it? Is it the entire project, or is it just the taste of the final wine?
No, it's a global project. It's the feeling and the experience we are sharing with the product manager. We are fermenting the ideas, having a glass of wine in the evening, trying to understand the country, trying to understand the people. Some of the wines we discovered at the time with Alex, with Guillaume, with Robin, were not necessarily wines we liked, but we learned from them. And we needed to understand their style, their reason of being like this, or oaky or sweet, etc. So the idea is to respect the country, to understand the country. That's why when we pop up in a country, we take a car and we get lost in the country for 10, 12 days. And when I say get lost, trust me, it's definitely, it has happened.
I'm just gonna stop you there. Would you be able to tell us about your first trip to Chile and what that was like for you?
Yeah, I love to tease my colleagues, because my first trip in Chile was taking a car, no map, no Google map, and this is the huge difference, no Google map, and just some indication on a different email. When you see the red wagon, turn right, and when you see the police station, go straight. So yeah, it has been always a proper adventure. But at the same time, without getting lost and without traveling a bit blind, if I can say, I'm not sure we would have met all the people we are dealing with today. So I'm proud that we've done it, and I think that the result is also the consequences of daring doing these trips.
Yeah. So we're going to get to Pablo y Walter. I think as a group, we all feel that's an excellent case study and representation of the Boutinot approach in the New World working well. But if we rewind back to the start, Samantha, would you be able to tell us about our first steps in the New World and how it came from from curiosity?
Yeah, well, the first steps in the New World was actually going back to the old world of the New World, because we were in South Africa, and Paul Boutinot, whose natural home in France is in the Loire, has a natural affinity for Chenin, and travelled to South Africa and discovered the wealth of Chenin grapes that were available there, and started working with a few cellars to do natural yeast ferments in the cellars on Chenin. And as soon as the apartheid restrictions ended, Paul turned around and said, "We're going to import some wine from South Africa. Find out how to do it." Yeah, right. Thanks, Paul. That's a really good challenge, but that's how it really happened. So getting to understand how you transport bulk wine from South Africa to France for bottling was quite some experience. And the first vintage we dealt with was in 1993. So at the end of 93, early 94, we had to sort out transport, imports, customs, authorization, all sorts of administration, because France is a very administrative country. But it worked, and the first tank was a success, and we grew from strength to strength, working with the same partners for the first years, and then the range of products and the range of varietals, because wines are intrinsically good, and we wanted to represent those in bottle and get them distributed more widely in Europe.
Yeah. And when we start a project in a new region like this, are we trying to fulfill a market need, or does it come from a place that for you guys that you just want to know about that region? You want to explore, you want to get creative?
I think the wine has to speak. That the heart of our business is wine. And if the wine speaks to us, then we want to make that wine speak to our customers. There will be commercial needs that we have to respond to, but in essence, the wine has to be it has to have the right profile, it has to have quality, and we just need to find a way of getting it out into the market and encouraging people to taste it.
Yeah, Alex, from your point of view, is that the key to this entire relationship between you guys and the winemakers? Is trying to balance, right, what will fit commercially, but at the same time, what are we excited by? What do we want to do?
I think so. Yeah, we're lucky, if you like, that we should know our market, certainly the UK market, really well, and we're speaking to the sales teams about what's working and seeing examples of wines that are maybe starting to take off. So we bring that knowledge to the trip, to the trips we work on, but the winemakers bring the expertise and the know-how to what we're doing. So it's a combination of things, but ultimately it is about finding wines that excite us and then thinking, okay, well, how can these work in the market? Occasionally it will happen the other way, where we have to, we think, well, we need to find that different style of maybe Chardonnay from California or something a bit more functional. But the majority of the time, it's actually us discovering something new and being really excited, and then with that UK knowledge or UK and international knowledge, thinking about what markets can this really work for, and then delivering it. I think we rely then on the winemakers to really work with the growers that we have the relationships with, to make sure that not only are we selecting and blending the right wines, but I remember my first trip in March with Eric to Chile. So we'd been out the previous July to source new vintage wines, but we went back the following March, just before the main harvest time in Chile. And it was amazing listening to Eric sort of advising the growers on when he thinks they should pick the grapes and what style of Sauvignon we want, because we don't want something too ripe, so maybe you should pick a bit earlier. And that advice was hugely welcomed by the growers we work with, and that's the expertise that only really the winemakers can bring to it.
Yeah, how important is having a relationship with the growers, rather than it's not all transactional, it's not all commercial, but a real connection with the growers? How important is that in order to create the wines that you work on?
The connection is based on wine and œnology, I should say. There's a huge desire from us to understand what is done in the country, and vice versa, from the different winemakers we met that not necessarily had the chance to travel to Europe to understand what were our practices. Now let's be clear, we don't bring a French recipe to Chile or to South Africa. We bring an experience that we share with Chilean and Argentinian experience, trying to see what are the bullet points and trying to get the most of two people to experiences, if I can say. We don't give lessons. We try to understand and we try to say, and if we try that, and what about that? We've tried that in France, it was good. Can we give it a try in your country, in your winery? So it has been super exciting. In certain countries, we've been making wines for more than 20 years. I can tell you that the way we've made wine 20 years ago, 10 years ago, and 2 years ago is having the same vein, if I can say, but we've developed the style, we've reoriented the cuvée, listening to the market, speaking with the product manager, also considering the vintages. So it's a permanent chat, exchange with the other winemakers with whom we've been speaking, and this is the most exciting part of the job.
And Robin, from your point of view, having built these relationships over decades, do you feel like that means that when we want to make a specific wine, when we get a request in from a customer, does that mean that we are prepared to meet it because of the work that we've put in over the last few years? Oh, one sec. Sorry, Robin, we've muted. Go ahead.
Okay, so I think it's very helpful that we can be reactive for the market as well. I mean, we are very realistic about the fact that a lot of the wines that we work with in the Southern Hemisphere, in the New World, are wines that are required by the market per se. Sauvignon Blanc, Merlot, White Zinfandel, for example, and it's critical that we do that to the best of our ability. And it gives us a platform to get excited about things that the market might not yet know about. Like it might be an unknown Malbec, it might be Cinsault from South Africa. I think if you follow the curve of our rosés from the New World, so South Africa rosé, it's interesting to sort of chart the colour of rosé over the last 15 years, how that has evolved, and we have done that based on market feedback and the demand, and also our palates as well. So, and I think that we can evolve well with our partner growers that we have. All of our best wines that we produce at Boutinot, regardless of country, with all of our grower partners, all of the best wines, most consistent wines come from the best and most consistent relationships with growers. So finding the right people in the first place is absolutely critical to our program. It's critical to our future, and it describes our past, I think. That those individual growers that we've worked with, generally we with a good grower relationship, we'll maintain that relationship for over 20 years in Chile, in South Africa, and those other countries are newer to us, they're relatively new, but I think we've identified some growers that we'd like to work with. For instance, one of the questions here is, which countries would you like to work with where you don't work with now? I think we've identified some growers that would be of interest for us to work with. So yeah, I think we can be reactive. It's very important that we are reactive as a company from a commercial point of view, and that we have a fantastic roster of growers and relationships to go to for those wines. At the same time, it's quite often those older relationships where there might be a block of grapes that they've forgotten about, or that get blended away, that we might identify as exciting from an older existing established relationship where we can bring in something new, but the body of what they produce for us might be a classical Sauvignon Blanc, and we just happen to like their Sauvignon Blanc more than somebody else's. Just on the photo that you have here, Felix, our first sort of explorations into Chile, where we were dissatisfied with a lot of the growers on the valley floor, and found more excitement and more kind of Boutinot palate, a slightly more European finesse, if you like, to some of the fruit and the wines that were coming from higher uphill. So by getting lost up the mountains, we found growers that are more relevant to our program. And those are the relationships that we've kept for the longest, because we seem to understand each other better.
Samantha, I'm intrigued. Like, when you go to a grower and say, right, we know you're great at this, we're looking to try something like this, how do they take that? Do they take that as criticism, or is it because of that collaborative relationship? Is it just a challenge that they're happy to meet?
The first time you meet a grower, you don't ask them to do something that takes them out of their field of comfort. The second time you meet them, you can say, well, how about thinking about doing this? And the third time, they'll come to you and say, look what we've done. So it is all about building those relationships and making people feel comfortable about what you are asking of them and the results that will come from the work that they put into amending the way in which they work. Yeah. So relationships really are key to the progress that we are able to offer in our finished wines. And the, I'm going to say the slightly more European palate adaptation of a wine from a new world country is really quite interesting and quite important, because I think we add a certain touch, I don't want to sound sort of pretentious, but a certain touch of finesse. We know where we want to be going, and we sort of find ways of making that happen to give an extra depth and texture to the wines that we capture in bottle. And that we can only do because of the relationships.
Yeah. So we're rocketing along nicely here. I think now would be a good time to break down this project of Pablo y Walter and why we feel that works. One quick question for you, Robin. We discussed this in the preparation. Do you, every single project you touch, does it turn to gold, or are there a lot of lessons learned along the way?
No, one of the things that the reason you're asking is so I can talk about failure, Felix. So failure is a fantastically important part of success, and everything that we've worked on that has succeeded in however we might measure that is built on trial and error. There are some grower relationships that we can't keep, some relationships that get burnt for whatever reason it might be. But I think all of our experimentation in given countries is the more we experiment, the more we understand by being in those countries, and that's fundamental to Boutinot's own production. The whole thing is a product of a relationship with people that get us, and that we get them. They understand our palate, and then with those people we can experiment. I've got a very happy list of things we can go through for another meeting, perhaps, of things that haven't worked, and I'm chiefly responsible for those and delighted to talk about them. But the things that do work are I think that there is a sweet spot between finding the right grower, the right perhaps cultural expression that might not have already been made. I mean, just to go on about Pablo, just as an example, the first time we presented it at the Wines of Argentina tasting, there was a queue of about 40 people behind this wine, principally Argentinians, wondering what the hell is that? And it was this label that looked like a sort of Mendoza graffito, which had not been done before, is to bring a slice of Mendoza onto this particular wine. So that's a photo of Eric on the wrong side of the world, as it were. So standing in Argentina. But I think when a wine and a project and a label kind of sort of suggest themselves to you, that's when we will experiment. But by no means is that always successful at all. We tend to talk about our successes naturally more, but believe me, they're built on experimentation, which is the polite way of phrasing failure. So yeah,
I think this is key to getting to any successful point. It's what's he called? Thomas Edison inventing the light bulb, isn't it? Like he didn't fail at any point. He figured out 999 ways that it wouldn't work. So it's exactly the same thing, isn't it? Learning all the time. Eric, would you be able to kind of take us through the Pablo y Walter project? I think we hold that up not as one that we say is really good. It's just a project that, as a team, we are all extremely proud of. So would you be able to give us the background for this entire project?
Yeah, absolutely. I was traveling with Robin at the time. And we went around Mendoza, and we spent 2 days tasting 100 wines, if I can say. And we visited a lot of producers, some of them that we know, some that we didn't. And after 2 days, we said there's a lot of interesting things, but we haven't tasted. You have to put that 12 years in the back, 12 years ago. We didn't taste any wine that was without any oak, without any sweetness, without any I would say, roundness. Everything was big, was good, but we wanted something more simple. And finally, the idea we had with Robin, sharing a bottle of Malbec in the evening, you have to put that in the context, is, and what about creating a Malbec that has nothing except grapes? Because at the time, 12 years ago, in Argentina, they were keen on playing with oak, chips, and a lot of things. That was the idea, that was the beginning. We needed then to find the good partner for that. And it happened that Walter from Walter Brescia Winery was the person that followed us and that agreed with us to go with the project. Whereas at the beginning, we must say, they were not convinced, not completely convinced. But we pushed them. We helped to invest in a tank at the time so that we can target one project, our project. We helped them to secure grapes, or they show us what are the grapes we wanted to secure. And a year later, we came back, we started to taste the wine, and we had to do a couple of tweaks, but the result was there. The baby was born, and it's now growing, and it's now tiny, quite serious success.
Yeah, so it's a great example, isn't it, of all the different steps there. It's building that relationship, challenging them to do it. They're not convinced, but because you have that relationship, they will go with you on the journey. It's not perfect at the start, but we'll make some tweaks, and we're making mistakes along the way, and it's a product that the team are proud of. Alex, from a product manager point of view, what is it that you like the most about this project?
I think, I mean, I'd love to take all the credit from Pablo, because it has to be one of our best projects. But in fairness, it was very much Robin's baby, and I think from finding the wine stylistically at the time, it was different. But absolutely, you see where the market's gone now. That kind of fresher, more purer expression of Malbec is actually what most people are doing, and this was 10, 12 years ago, wasn't it? So it's amazing how it's come round to this.
I think it's that also, and this is true of Boutinot's own production program altogether, is that quite often we'll surprise the grower by saying, don't do anything else to the wine. So we work with an Australian Malbec, for example. We've looked at Malbec in other parts of the country, but with Australia, for instance, where we also work with Malbec, it was grasping that wine before they did anything further with it, because to us it had a beautiful, simple expression and honesty, a sort of a purity and an aroma that might not be associated with, say, Malbec. Or somebody might say this Cinsault is it's a bit pale and light, so we're going to do this to it. And actually, you found something quite magical. And I think really for us, by not necessarily being from those countries, but by traveling to those countries crucially and tasting something that is different and very often purer, and there's less oak, there's less winemaking, it's simpler, and it's a more kind of natural product in terms of it tastes and smells of its origin. That's when we get really excited. And Pablo is a function of that, of taking a pure Malbec from old vines in Lujan de Cuyo before it becomes oaks, and just allowing it to be that aromatic, fresh thing. And then everybody was surprised by the demands that followed for such a bright, fresh wine. So I think finding a wine and capturing it before it's kind of has too much makeup applied to it is fundamental to what we do as well.
Yeah, and when you talk about, if we go back to that point of representing the region, if we just quickly touch on the branding from your point of view, Robin, is that something that you think that you're proud of, for actually capturing that region in a way that people might not have been doing it previously?
But to be honest, I mean, when you design a label, it's great fun to have fun with the label. The name is down to a colleague of ours in our entree team in London, Bea Pascual, who's Spanish, and she thought Pablo y Walter would nice and kind of capture this particular wine, for it to be about people, because it was always meant to be about basically a wine company working with a grower, and the sort of meeting of minds, the handshake therein, if you like. So, but in terms of the design, we just wanted to use the local color, culture, the graffiti. If there's anybody from Argentina listening, forgive me, but there's something about Mendoza in particular that has this incredible culture of it's the biggest university town outside Buenos Aires. It's full of this incredible kind of colorful culture. The cafe culture, the dancing, all the crazy old cars, the colour. It's a completely wonderful place, and none of that seems to be being expressed in terms of anyone's branding. Even Walter Bressy's branding, who's the grower behind this. Walter's labels don't really look anything like this, but to us, they're sort of young, fresh, bright, aromatic Malbec was a way of expressing that. And I think as product managers, we can have a lot of fun with labels and branding, particularly in the new world where there is a bit less. You're less. It's harder, perhaps, to sort of represent a Côte d'Rône or a Chianti or whatever it might be in a more kind of out there way. So we can have a lot of fun in terms of the packaging to really try and tell a story that hasn't been told.
So looking forward, we've got some questions about what you guys as a group would like to work on. We'll get to those towards the end, but for this year, it's probably been, the toughest year to have kind of been doing this sort of role. I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir on that one. Samantha and Guillaume, what are you looking forward to the most through the back of 2020 through COVID? What are you looking forward to?
Getting on an aeroplane to go somewhere and actually meet people again, because it is through going places and meeting people that we find the inspiration and the joy and the extra wines that we can add to our portfolio.
And Guillaume, what do you learn from working with winemakers in all these different countries? What does it give to you?
Excuse me, can you repeat, Felix, please?
Yeah, so when you're traveling to all these different countries, to these regions, what are you taking away? How is it affecting you? How is it changing you as a winemaker?
To begin with, it's an opportunity personally to discover a new country. Obviously, discover new people, new wine, and try to share our winemaking skills. Try to learn a new country, and to begin with, it could be a trap to try to fit what we are able to do in our own country and try to do it in another country. It's not as easy because we can't afford to claim too early that we know. We have to learn the country to begin with. In any case, it's great to share. To increase these relationships and at the end to have a win-win attitude between us, between the guys that we get to know, and
Felix, we both gain. You have to understand also that it happened to Robin, to me, to Guillaume, to travel to a foreign country, expecting to guide the project, and finally coming back in France, we are taking some ideas or practices from these guys to do something on our side. We've started to ferment some Sauvignon barrels because the South African were playing with that. We've started to make Chenin in Carcassonne because we thought, Chenin should be interesting. We should give it a try in France also. So we learn, we bring ideas, and we mix a bit of everything.
Yeah.
And in any case, it is a long job. It's not as easy to achieve a product within 1 or 2 years. That's why the background of our company, the network that we have over there, the relationships, helps to at the end to achieve the product. But it's not a quick job and not as easy as expected.
I think looking forward, Alex, we've talked in the preparations for this session about projects that you personally are looking forward to, and like we've said, it's been extremely difficult doing any sort of new product development through this year. This is one that you've mentioned as one that you're particularly proud of, particularly excited by. Would you be able to introduce it for us?
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, partly because it's brand new, and the wines hopefully they're going to launch in April, so it feels really relevant, and also on the back of actually the difficulties of not being able to travel. There isn't a great deal of new stuff this year, which in some ways is a bit sad, but actually in some ways very understandable. But these two wines have been probably been 2 years in the making, really. Samantha and I have visited California the last, I think, 4 years in January, usually. And in 2019, we visited a vineyard. A grower we work with has got a vineyard in the Central Coast region of Monterey. So it was a region sort of south of Sonoma, Napa, where we were based. But we wanted to visit, and we visited this beautiful vineyard, which it wasn't right next to the Pacific Ocean, but was sort of near enough to have quite a significant influence. So cooler breezes, cooler temperatures overall. So and the grower we worked with had really good sort of plots of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. Both great varieties that are very popular. Both great varieties that we naturally would want to work with from California. We tasted the sort of resulting wines, and we're really there was one sort of block of Pinot Noir that we tasted that Samantha and I just looked at each other and knew that was the wine we wanted to work with. And then unfortunately we came back and a few weeks later that parcel of Pinot Noir had been snapped up, so we had to wait. We weren't prepared to settle for something we weren't confident in. So when we went back last year, we kind of retasted the same parcel of Pinot Noir, and it was just as good, if not better. And Eric was with us that last year, so it was immediately, we've got to work with this wine. And we kind of bag-seeded it and made sure that we blended around that parcel, but made the best Pinot Noir that we could. Chardonnay was also very good, and probably, since Samantha said before, and Robin, we lean to more sort of finesse, if you like. We like sort of slightly fresher styles, and that coastal vineyard, it lends itself to sort of more balanced Chardonnay. So still some nice ripe sort of New World Californian fruit, but more nerve and freshness in it, which naturally sits better with us. And so it's quite easy to think these two wines could work really well in the market. It's taken quite a long time to come into fruition through different reasons, one or two challenges with shipping. But I think I think I'm right in saying, Samantha, we're really excited to finally launch them in April. And hopefully, I think certainly for me, from a UK perspective, it was a chance to deliver wines that we're quality-wise very proud of. But actually, when you look in the market, I think we can really deliver something that sits well below wines that we'd expect to buy from agencies. So quality will be hopefully right up there. But I think value-wise and price-wise, they will sit well below. So if we can do that well, then we really are delivering. So we'll see how it all works out. But I think we are looking forward to them finally arriving.
Yeah. So from a winemaking side of things, there, Samantha, what is it that people can expect when they have these bottles in their hands? What is it that jumped out from the glass that made you and Alex look at each other and go, "We need this. We need this in the company"?
To be honest, it was the finesse and the actual varietal typicity that just cried out of the glass. Pinot Noir, obviously, Boutinot, France is based in Macon, so southern Burgundy, so we're very familiar with Pinot Noir and with Chardonnay. And these two wines really did express, okay, a new world take on our two traditional varietals, but the finesse and the elegance was actually there. If you combine with that, the fact that when we ship wines in bulk, because we have to, let's be realistic, we ship the wines in bulk in tank containers, and then we receive them at our bottling plant, and we take great care of them. And the quality that comes through the care that we can give to the wines this end is actually part and parcel of our overall package of getting wines in bottle in the right condition to share with our customers. And just have that exquisiteness and that expression of finesse. And we take great care, which again is part of the joy of being involved in these projects, going to see the growers, getting to taste the wines before they even ship, getting to taste the wines when they arrive here and know what needs to be done to them to keep them in that perfect state is a pretty big challenge. And when you come through with a new bottle at the end of the day and something that tastes really good, you think, we've done it. Here's another baby that Boutinot has created, and just get it out and show it to people so that they can enjoy it too.
Yeah, it's been close to 30 years of you just having the challenge of just being asked to do things that seem daunting from the off, don't they? But does it keep you on your toes?
It definitely does. Yeah, 30 years, gosh, help. It's one challenge after the other. One day, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year is not the same as the same period for the previous year, week, month, or whatever. And I think that is the joy of Boutinot. Again, it comes back to letting wine speak. We have certain requirements, customers have certain requirements, but ultimately it is the wine that will speak to us and the wine that we can get out to customers to enjoy that means that we can get momentum going for the next project. So the next project is another challenge because we don't yet know what it's going to be, but there will be one.
Yeah, no doubt you'll get another challenge shortly. We're close to wrapping up here, so we've got time for a few questions if people would like to put some in. But to start off with, one of the questions coming in from Spain is this links to something you've said, Eric, in the past about how if you ask two people to make a lasagna, what they make will be completely different. How difficult is it to try and create wines in one region and keep it expressive of that region whilst also doing it in a style that is unique to you?
Wow, that's a question. Now, simple. Don't bring your recipe following the recipe you've practiced elsewhere. Don't bring it. It's not going to work. Bring the, let's say, the experience of practicing this recipe, but adapt it to the ingredients, the climate, the ripeness, the equipment that are in the cellar, so that you keep your skills, you keep your experience, but you give birth to something that, to a wine that will still respect its origin.
Yeah. This one I quite like to ask Guillaume. We make wine in all these different countries. Is there any country that you would like to make wine in that you haven't been to already?
Yeah, east of Europe is getting probably something quite interesting in the future. Obviously, we are used to call the new world wine in the south hemisphere, but yeah, east of Europe could be for the future a good plan.
Yeah, that's Alex. You've been working with some pretty incredible growers over in Eastern Europe. Would you be able to tell us what you've learned and what you've almost been surprised by? What have been the highlights from working with people from that region?
I think we've seen great diversity and you know, stylistically wines that are very different. So whether it's Ferment from Hungary or Saperavi from Georgia, wines that I guess may be quite alien to people, but actually when you taste them and you get to know them, they offer so much. They offer something that is in some ways a little bit familiar, but then with a nice twist and a little bit of an exotic twist that makes them hugely exciting. And I think from UK experience, that's pulling through into sales, and we're seeing beginning to see quite a lot of success in wines from those regions. But yeah, I think looking at maybe being able to do that on our own and with whether it's Hungary, Romania, Moldova, or even Georgia, and start sort of thinking that we can mess around with some Cuevres one day would be incredible. I think we're a little bit away from that, but it would be there is now another new world, or the third world, or well, not the next world, if you like, that we would talk about. And I think that's where there's huge interest. And I know Robin's worked with a producer in Japan, which it's hard to imagine we'll be making our own wines in Japan, but who knows one day. It's hugely exciting.
Yeah, I think the next world thing, as we call it, we talk about, you know, we produce wine in England as well, which is a fairly marginal climate. We have Canadian projects in Okanagan Valley, which is another marginal climate. Personally, I'd love to understand the terroir of planet Mars one day, but before then, there are other kind of countries that we can look at. But yeah, we are already working in marginal climates with Canada and England as it stands, and we're just at the beginning of those adventures. So there's a lot to communicate that we're working on now already.
Perfect. Well, I think that's plenty to go on. We've covered absolutely everything. We have plenty of questions that have come in that we don't have time to answer. So if you have any others at all, drop us an email. We'll get all the details across to you. And if you'd like to try any of the wines that we've discussed, whether it's the Pablo Walter or the Shadow Point that's just around the corner that I think it'd be crazy to not try, then get in touch with your Boutinot representative. The guys in France, the product management team, thank you so much for joining us, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.
Merci.
And we have our next session coming up at 2:00, which is sustainability in winemaking with Charlotte Kingsley and John Leach. We'll be breaking that down for you. So fingers crossed you join us for that. Thanks again, everybody.
Bye. Bye.
Yeah.